Bit by bit. With me in studio, I have Dr. Joseph Rotich, who is a governance analyst, who is an economic and governance expert. I also have one gentleman called Muntalo Advice, who is a communication strategist, who is also a political and a communication strategist. These gentlemen are going to give us an overview and what is happening in Kenya and across the globe. But just before I start, let me just give them their time to say hello to you. Let me start with Advice. Good morning, Advice.
Good morning, my brother. It's been some time since I was in studio.
Yes.
But it's hello to Kenyans. I hope everyone is keeping safe during these COVID times, because the third wave is actually real.
Yeah.
So even as we discuss matters politics and the state of the economy, it's important that all of us take the precautions.
Absolutely.
And stand guided by the guidelines by the MOH.
By the government. We're going to delve much into that. And Dr. Rotich, good morning. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good morning, Victor.
Have you been vaccinated? Let me start with that.
I have been. Yes.
It would have been a very
I think if vaccination actually means protection.
Yes.
Protected.
Right.
As I'm seated here.
Yes.
And I also urge our Kenyans
as a doctor
to embrace
yes.
the vaccination issue very seriously.
Yes.
Because as we are talking, COVID-19 is a real threat to the nation. So they have to respond promptly. The only unfortunate thing is that we know that we may be running out of the vaccines.
But the government says that they are on top of everything, and soon
we thank God for everything. If it will be available within a short time, it will help majority of the Kenyans. So of course, you know, of late, Kenyans have removed the very perception that they had. I mean, the fear that they had that the vaccination was not very safe. But as it is now, I think Kenyans have embraced that vaccination is actually key to our protection, especially our health.
And the data shows that more men have taken the vaccination more than women.
And you can also know, Victor, the majority the majority of the people who have actually died are actually men.
Yes.
So maybe that is the reason why they have responded that very positively.
Right.
I think the ladies or females are more resistant to this problem. But that is not a guarantee that we are telling them that they have to stay free. They have to remain with all the regulations that they are supposed to follow on a daily basis. Thank you so much, Victor.
All right, gentlemen, we are going to get into details with that, but let me start with one issue. Kenyans are talking. They're petitioning the IMF. They don't need a loan. I don't know how this is going to pan out. Let me start with you, Dr. Do you think we need this loan? 255 billion shillings. Do you think we need it as a country?
I think, Victor, we must be very real as Kenyans. We have come a long way. The kind of infrastructure that was laid down during His Excellency Mwai Kibaki's regime has been one of the most expensive infrastructure we have ever had in the country. And going by that, we talk about several investments that this country has done. You talk about the railway, you talk about the SGR, you talk about the roads that you see all over, you talk about electricity, you talk about everything that you can see today, Victor. There is, much of what we are seeing could not have been done without loan. And when we talk about the IMF loan, which Kenyans are actually reacting, it is anything to do with the management of the loan. It is not about refusing the loan. Looking by what was explained, it was actually to break the cap of the COVID-19 demand, to buy the vaccines, to do all sorts of things. But you see, what has been in the background of the minds of the majority of Kenyans, Victor, is about the KEMSA issue, that scandal that has actually, it took away the belief and the trust that the majority of Kenyans actually had in the management of some few individuals. But you see, this one is an isolated case. When you talk about the KEMSA, whereby the head of state has given that maybe within a period of 21 days, the verdict of those or the culprits could have been actually unearthed. But you see, to date, Victor, nothing has been done as that sort. The investigation is still on. So in that case, at the backdrop of Kenyans' minds, they are saying, if we are not able to manage this, if we could not fill what, say, 1.2 billion, which was spent in the old scenario, and what is so special about this 255.9 billion that these people are actually seeking from IMF? So in my own understanding, the suspicion is based on the mistake that really happened with the KEMSA issue. Otherwise, Kenyans has embraced the availability of the services that we will not be having now without the loan itself.
Yes.
So to me, I think the government should come up very clearly and draw the line on what they want to use these funds. You see, when you talk about a blanketed kind of approach, a wholesale kind of approach, Kenyans cannot believe that at the moment. It has to be given in black and white, that this is what, this much will go to this way, this much will go to this way.
But Dr. Can we survive without a loan?
And let me tell you, Victor, for your information, much of what this country has done, it has done under a loan. So it is like we have conceived a foreign stomach.
Right.
That must be fed by the foreign money. So in this case, much of our infrastructure, much of what we have done in this country, we cannot survive without loan.
Yeah.
And you can remember, Victor, when His Excellency the President was asked while he was in Mombasa some time back last year, he was asked whether he will still go to China for loan. He said, yes, I will go. Much of what has been done in terms of electricity, in terms of other infrastructures like the roads, in terms of SGR, in terms of all the economic development that we have witnessed as a country. You see, the most important thing, Victor, is that Kenyans are yet to appreciate.
Yes.
Because when you talk about SGR, it is a mega investment.
Right.
When we talk about the Thika highway, it is a mega investment. And the only mistake that this country committed at the beginning was to go for the commercial loan, which they did it both commercially and for domestically and international. And that loan has matured. Most all of them. We spend almost $1 trillion.
Yes.
To service the debts.
Yes.
And that is the feeling that Kenyans are actually, they are feeling the pinch.
Mundalo is itching here, and I don't know what's going to be your take, because IMF says that the government says that this money it doesn't attract any interest. What's your take on this? Do we need this loan? Which says that yes, we need a loan and we need to have our services running up and down. I mean, do we need this loan? I
agree with Daktari up to where he says we basically need loans for development.
Right.
Even for personal development, we even as individuals go to the banks and take loans to do many things. But then you don't take a loan just because you qualify for it. And that is the problem that we are having here. We have gotten to a point where as a country we feel like we are overborrowing. And that's why Parliament starts to feel like they have no authority, because even the glass ceiling that they have set up, it has been surpassed. We are a country that is now beyond the 7 trillion mark.
Yes.
So we are far beyond. So are we just then borrowing because we have a right to borrow, or are we just then borrowing because we qualify to borrow?
Yes.
And another problem that we have with this borrowing is, in as much as the borrowing is for the benefit of the people and the republic, it must be directly proportional to the feeling of the people. If the people are not feeling the loans, then that means it's not consummated it is not worthy. As we speak today, 200,000 Kenyans have signed that petition to say IMF should not give us loans.
How is it going to work? Is it going to sail through?
Of course it is not going to sail through, because the IMF doesn't listen to social media. And that's why it basically is not going to... It is something that is going to create perception.
Yes.
It is going to affect the perception of the government. Of course, it will put also in a bit of negative light. But in terms of the loan approval, I don't think it will affect the loan approval. At the end of the day, we're going to have this money. But then the question is, to what use do we always put this money? If the president told us that we are losing 2 billion every day, that means we will lose this money in 100 days. That is actually less than a year. We'll have lost the money that we have borrowed. So, in as much as we qualify for the loans, because I'm sure we cannot be given a loan when we don't qualify for it, but in as much as we qualify for these loans, are they trickling down? Is the common mwananchi feeling the effect and the impact of these loans? Because look at the KEMSA scandal that was there recently. Look at every other corruption scandal that we have in this country. Look at the corruption scandal behind the SGR. So are our loans benefiting individuals more than they are benefiting the country as a whole? And that is the whole point. And also, is the government staying within the legislative framework, whereby when we say we are not supposed to borrow beyond a certain level, are we sticking to that? If you're not sticking to that, then what is the need of the parliament then? Because we must be able to work within a certain time frame, and we must be able to work within laws and structures and legislations that have been put in place. And that is the whole problem. But generally, as a country, the people of Kenya are not feeling the effect of these loans. And that is where the problem is.
So what next? Because at the end of the day, development must be carried out, all right? We have surpassed the 7 trillion mark.
Yes.
So what next for Kenya? Are we going to sit back and say, okay, it's a done deal, we're not going to borrow anymore? The Kenyans are petitioning IMF. So are we going to move to another lender? Or what do you expect?
I think what is next for Kenyans as it stands today is just that Kenyans need to wake up and get to the reality that governance is of essence here, and leadership is what is important. Because at the end of the day, President Mwai Kibaki left this country at less than 2 trillion of a loan. Today we are past 7. That means actually we have been increasing our debt by about 1 trillion every year. So that basically shows you that it rises and falls on leadership. So Kenyans, in as much as we are complaining, in as much as we are saying we don't want this debt, but what do we do when time comes for us to choose our leaders? Because when we choose the leaders that are going to take us back to debt, then we should blame ourselves more than we should blame the leaders, because every other person and every other country, we only get the leaders that we deserve. So the only next thing for Kenyans today, the only thing that they can bank on, their last straw of hope, is in the next dispensation of the election, whereby when we are going, at the next time that we'll be given opportunity and we'll be told, go and get your MCA, go and get your member of parliament, go and get your president. Are you going to think soberly? Are you going to remember this debt? Or are you going to remember your tribe? Or are you going to remember your local interests? That is the problem.
Dr. What did I say?
I think the issue at hand, Victor, when you look at the extent at which this country has gone, as far as the infrastructural development is concerned, it is something we can appreciate. The only big problem that, the only thing that Kenyans don't seem to see is the yield of what we have invested so far. Because when you talk about the Thika railway, is it paying? When you talk about the railway or whatever from Mombasa to is it paying?
No.
When we talk about so much of the investment that we are talking about, are they paying? That is where, you see, you look at it in terms of, short term and long term. Much of the investment that this country has put in place are actually long term in nature. And of course, even the reaping, the cultivating back is still long term. And of course, it is taking a long time to be felt. And that is why Kenyans are overcrying. Not that this country has not done anything. When you go outside there, Victor, you can see major projects that are going on. Talk about the roads up, down. Talk about the railway. Talk about all these things. There is something that we can smile as Kenyans and say, surely this country has done something. But you see, the few cases that we have, the hiccups that we have, and I can tell you, Victor, the reason why Kenyans overreacted by signing against the IMF loan, it is basically based on almost 1.2 trillion, or the money, how the KEMSA issue was actually managed. That is based on that, basically. And then again, the imagination that, of course, there is this mega corruption that is happening in this country. But that is something of another, that we need a lengthy discussion. But there is something that my friend actually touched it. The issue of leadership. When you talk about leadership, my friend, we have the legislature, we have the executive. You see now, some few days ago, you see the senators, they are talking to their president through the media. You talk about the parliamentarians, they are talking to the president through the media. Where did we go wrong? The legislators are the people who are, they are low, let me just remind you, Victor. Last year, 2019-2020 financial year, the parliament actually recommended for the government 635 billion shillings to subsidize, or rather to back up the budget of that financial year. And then again, when the government, the executive also had actually requested for the extensions, the lifting up of the tax, the apex part of it, from 6.5 to 9 trillion. Now, we have a budget of, at the moment, we have a loan rate at almost 7.6 trillion.
Actually, it's 7.352
It is, 7.3 after topping up the IMF. Now, looking by that, it means that the government has been moving as by the acceptance of the parliamentarians. They are yet to reach the 9 trillion mark, the eye at the ceiling that was put by the parliament. And then they also open up to the minister and the executive that you shall be borrowing. And this borrowing that we are talking about today, the IMF issue, part of it is to service the debts. That means, yes, part of it is to service the debts. Part of it is to mitigate the issue of the COVID-19. So these are emergency issues that requires emergent attention.
And let me bring to your attention here. IMF gave Kenya in April 2021, the total amount that Kenya has actually borrowed is 7.352 trillion shillings in the last, that's dated January 2021, all right? So the question is, how are we going to service these debts? Because we have got 108 billion shillings from World Bank. We have got 100, that's a total of 468 billion shillings from Africa Development Bank, and so much more.
You talk about the loan that is matured as of now,
Yes.
Victor.
Yes.
The government has been, that is why most of the calls have been, they are asking the government that they have to reschedule. To reschedule means they have to look at them, they have to increase their time frame, they have to request a matter loan to service the already matured loans. And what the government is actually doing, it is actually on course. The only problem that we have is that our loan has been increasing. And Kenyans don't seem to appreciate what the government has done.
Yes.
But the moment we open our eyes and see the infrastructural development that has been done in this country, we would be able to say, yes, despite the problem that we have now as a country, at least we have development that we are seeing. Not all is lost. You cannot say 7.35 trillion shillings,
Yes.
that is the depth of this country, that nothing was done. It will be very ironical that we perceive that way. The only thing that we need to do as a country,
Yes.
we need to open up. We need to explain to the public, this is what we want to do. You need to scale down. The budget should be very clear.
Very good.
And it should be seen to have been done.
Yes.
You see, the blanketed kind of budget that we normally show
Yes.
is what is causing the concern among the Kenyans. Like when you also ask, does these signatures against the loan will deter anything? It may not deter anything, but the message has been sent home.
The message has been sent home.
That is the bottom line.
Let me bring in Mundalo here as a communication strategist, and he's talking about the government should come out openly and explain to the citizens, this is what we are going to do with the money. It is here. Our total borrowing, we have got a mark of 7 trillion. We have surpassed to 7.352 trillion shillings. Are we lacking communication? Are the leaders lacking communication to the public?
You know, governments exist for the people. The people are the primary reason why the government then exists. The feeling of the people is what the government is supposed to listen to. Governments are only seen to have worked effectively if the people they are serving feel like the government has worked effectively.
Yes.
It then does not matter how many roads you build. For as long as your people do not feel like you built the roads, then you have not worked. So in as much as Daktari is using a lot of energy to defend the government and saying they have done a lot of infrastructure projects, which I agree with very heavily, that they have done a lot of infrastructure projects. But also, the common Mwananchi is looking at what then became of the corruption scandals behind the projects. Yes, we have the project, but the corruption in the project is more, appears to be more than the project.
So it's,
you look at
it's
the
about
SGR.
suspicion. It's not even about the loan. It's about the suspicion.
You look at the
perception.
SGR, for example.
Right.
The government, when it starts this project, it tells people that they are going to have an electric train.
Yes.
What is there is not. And nobody has really tried to make the common Mwananchi understand why then it's not like that. So there is, as you put it, there is a communication breakdown as well in government, that they are not able to really put out their agenda clearly to the people, that the people can then understand what they really mean. Because you really are not going to convince a common Kenyan who cannot afford a mask.
Yes.
That we need more money to cushion COVID-19. Because this Kenyan feels, what is that money for?
Right.
I'm here at home. I cannot afford a meal. I cannot even afford that mask. So where are we using this money for? It's until you make them then understand that we are doing 1, 2, 3 things. But that is then when people will get to understand. But bottom line, we also have to agree.
Let me be an advocate, a devil's advocate here.
Yes.
Right now, we are seeing the highway being built from airport heading towards south to ABC Place. The whole highway, Wayaki Way, is under construction. We have the SGR, which was built by a loan, all right?
Yes.
We also have the ports of Kisumu, the ports of Mombasa, the ports of Lamu being expanded.
Yes.
If you travel right now from here to Moyale, you are going to have a tarmac where only camels are enjoying their time. I mean, years ago, we never used to have such... So
Exactly.
Is it true that the government has worked?
That's why I said,
Right.
I agree a lot with Daktari that there is a lot of infrastructural development that has happened in this country. But when we talk about the highway being built from the airport, for example, what is the percentage of Kenyans that are able to see that highway? What is the percentage of Kenyans that are able to travel to Moyale to see those roads? That is the reality on the ground. When you go to in the political environment, and Daktari has done politics for a while, and I'm sure he'll agree with me on this, that politics is very local. It is just not about you who is able to sit in Nairobi and can see that there is an expressway being made towards Westlands. It is also about the common mwananchi down there in Naitiri who votes. Does that person also know that there is an expressway being made from the airport? That's what we're saying. There is a communication breakdown in the systems of government. If they could make their communication and public relations better, that the common mwananchi can be able to distill that information, then it would be better. Just the way they really tried to do with the BBI. The problem is the government concentrates more on political projects. Like when it comes to ensuring that Kenyans understand political projects, they really work hard to ensure so. But then they don't work equally hard for Kenyans to then understand economic issues. So that's why then we'll always have an outrage. That's why people will cry and say, what is the need of the loan? And they would be right to do so because they really don't feel the loan. We cannot judge Kenyans by the little percentage of people in Nairobi and the little percentage of you and me who is able to travel to Mombasa and see the port and who is able to travel to Kisumu. What about the common Kenyan in Turkana? Does that person know that these things exist? And do these things directly benefit this person? It's about the macro and the microeconomics. Because a Kenyan who cannot afford a meal does not really care about the railway. A Kenyan who does not afford a meal does not really care about this road that you're building. It's until you make them understand.
So the key word here is communication.
It's communication.
Daktari, let me bring you in here. Have we lost it? Is there hope?
There is, let me tell you, Victor, what I'm really perturbed of is where the politicians don't seem to be appreciating what their government has done. Yet they are the ones who are in the mainstream. Because the misleading lot in this country, when a whole senator wakes up today and says, what exactly is the president doing? Yet they are the policymakers. When a whole member of parliament wakes up today and said, what does the president do? I mean, where did we go wrong as a country? Because why? Why is it that we don't want to, I mean, those people who are supposed to be in the kitchen are coming out and asking others, can you cook? Yet they are the ones actually who are supposed to cook. Our leaders involving the National Assembly, the Senate, are the people who should be telling us about what their government is doing. They are the policy makers. They are the one overseeing what is happening. Like now, when you tell me, Victor, about the projects which have been done, who have been doing the monitoring and evaluation to ascertain what was actually done? Does it mean that the executives are left at their own freedom to do what they want to do with the money that has been that has been given to them? I mean, through a budget. Does it mean that there should not be a follow-up among the members of parliament who are actually doing the monitoring and evaluation to ascertain what has actually been done? But why is it that they are also cursing what the government is doing, like the mwananchi on the ground? I mean, why are we in the darkness when our leaders are there? So what has happened, Bwana Victor, in this country is that we have exonerated politics than anything else. We don't seem to have any other leader apart from a politician. And that is where we have gone wrong. It is a high time we go back to our drawing board. Now, take for example, Victor, if last year, the other day, you were seeing the Senator Kiiga Ichung'wah. Ichung'wah was the chairman of the budgetary committee, 2019, 2020. When this budgetary, when this budget of 635 millions, billions were actually increased. And then again, on the same month, this is the time when they increased the debt ceiling to 9 trillion. The government now has a debt of 7.35 trillion. It has not surpassed the ceiling, that is 9 trillion. Now, in this case, why are we overcrying when it is the one? So the only problem that we have, Bwana Victor, is that our GDP is now 9.8. Our debt ceiling is 9 trillion. And when the two equates, it is the worst thing that can happen to the country. So this is something that we must be more careful. As it is now, with 7.35 trillion, we are still safe. But we are at the danger zone. We are at the red zone.
The biggest question somebody is asking out there is, how are we going to repay this money? Mundalo, how are we going to repay this money? That is the biggest question. We are borrowing, yes, the developments are happening, but it's going to have a ripple effect in our pockets.
Definitely. It's definitely the common mwananchi who is going to pay through our taxes. Of course, we'll have the huge explanations of the projects we'll be able to plow back. But then we are looking at the example of the SGR, and we are seeing that the SGR is not able to plow back what its target is for a year. So that means then we have to get some other money. So we are investing in projects, yes, but the amount of time that then it would take for them to plow back and repay the loan is more than the time we have between the time we took the loan and the time we're supposed to repay the loan. So that basically means that we have to get some money from somewhere else. And there is nowhere else where a country is supposed to get money away from the taxpayer. And that is the biggest problem that we are having. Because in as much as we are going to say, and Dr. Ari will make the grandiose explanation that, that the projects are there and the money is being used for the President Kibaki was able to build the Thika Superhighway and many other projects and many other roads. We didn't see a lot of this hue and cry that is being able to be seen now. So we must be able to accept that we are not treading on very smooth grounds.
Yes.
And that's why even Dr. himself can be able to say that we are not at the worst place, but we are at a danger zone.
Right.
The question is, why are we at a danger zone? We are not supposed to be at a danger zone as a country. So it is unfortunate that the truth is the repayment of the loan has to come from the Mwananchi, and two, it has also to come from renegotiation, because once we have maybe another government in place, they might be able to go forward and renegotiate these loans so that for some we can have reductions, for others we can have extensions in terms of the duration that we have to pay. That is the only way we are going to deal with this. But the reality of the matter and the truth of the matter is that the common Mwananchi, the common Kenyan, is not feeling the impact of these loans that we are borrowing. And that is the primary reason why governments exist.
All right. Okay.
Governments exist for the people.
For the people.
So what the people feel is what the government output is.
It might not be.
It might not be the reality, but what they feel is exactly what. So the government should be working very hard to ensure, because look at it right now. Just the other day, after the president locked down about 5 counties, the following day, we had demonstrations in town, and people want to go back to work. That is how bad the economy is. People don't have food.
But some of them, some people could argue that that was just hot air. I mean, the president was taking his stand because the coronavirus is here, and he's just trying to have that executive order to protect us.
And that is true, and the president is doing his work. But what I'm saying is, what is the feeling of the people on the ground? In as much as the president is right, and COVID-19 is real, and he must protect us from COVID-19, but when you look at some of these reactions of the people, you are then able to know how the economy is doing. Because that simply means, in a situation where we are moving along the path of death, because COVID-19 is ravaging, people are still willing to hold demonstrations and say, look here, we are willing to risk and go back to work. That shows you how bad our economy is doing. That people would rather risk to go and even be on the front line than sit at home, because they can't afford to sit at home. That is the reality of the economy. It doesn't matter how many ports we have built, but for as long as the common Mwananchi is not happy about his living standards, then that is it.
Gentlemen, we have to move very fast because of time. Dr. I'll give you 1 minute to respond to that as we go to the next one. This is connected to the IMF and all that. 2022 succession politics, and every politician now wants to run with it. You know, we want to call on the government to do this and all that and all that. Where are we in terms of 2022 succession politics right now, Dr.
I think, Victor, 2022 politics is now shaping up. In the past several months, we've been seeing His Excellency the Deputy President has been at the forefront. We have also seen Right Honorable Raila Odinga, even though he had not announced until the other day, when, of course, we are still looking at it as a rumor, because they are yet to come up with the whole thing. Then yesterday, we was also seeing another shaping up in the mind of Mukisa Kitui and the other team. So, generally speaking, 2022 will be a highly and hotly contested kind of election, which actually we are foreseeing. But again, the more the contestants, those who are actually running for the presidential race, the more competitive the ground will be come 2022.
And we are likely to see more alliances forming.
And one thing also that I wanted us to realize about these alliances, Bwana Victor, when you talk of an alliance between Kalonzo Musyoka, Gideon Moi, you talk of the likes of Mudavadi, you talk of Wetangula and all this and that, I want you to cluster Wetangula and Mudavadi as one, because they come from the same region. They are constituents, the same people. Then talk of Kalonzo is coming all alone, because we may not tell, because Kibwana is also joining the other team of Gifuta, I mean, the Mukisa Kitui. We saw in the talk yesterday. Raila is shaping up. So when you look at it, how many of these national parties with heavy contestants, those who are known, who are actually having the real backup of their own backyards? So you can address about 3 people. If say Raila, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, Mheshimiwa Deputy President Ruto, and then Mudavadi.
Yes.
If they were the 3,
yes,
I could tell you they have constituents where they are coming from.
Yes.
And of course, Kalonzo Musyoka.
Yes.
But going by the mathematics, you find Gifuta Gibwana huko, you find Ngilu, you find this governor in the same camp.
Mutua, yes.
Imagine they are looking at the same constituents from their own people. And then you also have Kalonzo Musyoka in another camp, that is in the National Alliance, having also Mudavadi, having Wetangula, having all those. So when you look at all these shapes, when it reaches a level of analyzing,
yes,
we must see those who have got bigger constituencies, bigger constituencies in terms of numbers. You cannot tell me about 3 people or 4 people from the same community will make any difference. It would have been rather one person from that community. So because why I'm talking about the communities, because even though I personally don't want to drift back to the communities, but let me talk about the constituency. I mean, where a person can marshal the support. Like now, when you talk about His Excellency, the Deputy President, he's all over.
Yes.
So with him, he has an advantage. He has an advantage, actually, of marshalling the national support. You cannot compare him, with Kalonzo Musyoka. You cannot compare him with Gideon Moi. You cannot compare him with the only people whom you can compare.
Yes.
His Excellency the Deputy President is the Right Honorable Raila Odinga,
yes,
who can marshal also a national support. So to me, I'm looking at the 2 leaders. One is Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and one is His Excellency the Deputy President.
Hold on there. Mundalo, let me just, alliances are being formed. We have got One Kenya Alliance right now. And we are more likely to see others forming up because we have got politicians who are trying to come up together and have the negotiating power come 2022, because most of them are going to go for the post-alliances and an agreement in the next government. What is this significant thing that the likes of Gideon Moi, Senator Gideon Moi, Moses Wetangula, and all those other dignitaries, are they going to bring a new change that they're purporting to bring come 2022?
About change, I don't see much, because if you're talking about the One Kenya Alliance, then it's an alliance of the people who have existed here before. There is no breath of fresh air. This is Musalia Mudavadi, who was vice president to Moi. This is Kalonzo Musyoka, who was vice president. So it's basically people who have been here before.
Right.
And so what I look at it right now is the alliances that are being formed is actually just political strategy going on. Because today we have Honorable William Ruto, who has created a constituency of people called hustlers. And quite in some numbers, you can say. Because in terms of being politically correct, even in his strategy, the Deputy President has run away from his tribal cocoon of being Kalenjin and created the hustler nation. Because being Kalenjin does not necessarily work to his advantage, because it reminds Kenyans of the Moi presidency. It reminds them of the 24 years.
Yes.
So in a clever move, he has moved away from that, and he's now called a hustler. Right? Now, when you come now to the other coalition, the One Kenya Alliance, now this is a coalition more or less of tribal and maybe regional kingpins. Because I think their strategy, therefore, is that since we cannot face William Ruto directly, then we would need to have many of us who can be able to be regional kingpins everywhere. And that's why they are all going to different regions to ensure that they create a kingpin. That's why in the by-election in Kabuchai, you could see all of them going there to campaign for a member of parliament of Ford Kenya, because they want to rubber stamp the authority of Ford Kenya in that region, and then rubber stamp the authority of ANC in Kakamega, Vihiga, and then rubber stamp the authority of Wiper in these other regions, so that when they come together and put all these votes in one basket for the presidency, then they can also get the presidency. I think that is their strategy. And the only problem, therefore, would be that in the history of political alliances and realignments, there has been no coalition that was formed too early that was able to make it to the end. Most coalitions that win elections are formed about barely 6 months to election. Look at the NAC. Look at most of these coalitions, they come at, but when you form the coalition too early, you also provide a lot of room for infiltration. You provide a lot of room for people to get into you.
Yes.
You provide a lot of room for people to look for who to snatch among you. So it's basically what is wrong about their strategy is their timing. Their timing is too early, and maybe that's what makes me then agree with the Daktari when he says, as far as it stands, it is still a Raila Odinga, William Ruto war.
Okay, let me ask this question. So Raila Odinga is here. The other 4 gentlemen have now moved to form the alliance.
Yes.
So all along they've been together, the NASA, all right? And all of a sudden they've moved them, they've formed the alliance. Raila is now standing on that corner alone. Are we likely to see Raila Odinga coming up with a shocker? Because he's also a politician, he's also strategizing, he's also making his moves, he's also calculating his moves. What shocker are we likely to see in the coming months towards general election? Briefly, as we bring in Daktari.
As we move towards the election, one of the shockers that I expect is that at least 1 or 2 members of the One Kenya Alliance will cross over to the Raila Odinga camp. I also expect that Raila Odinga is crafting his alliance. And because of his political experience over time, he knows that he will not unveil the alliance too early. Not now. At least after the BBI. At least after the BBI.
And that's exactly what he said.
When he is so sure of when you are creating this alliance, what are you promising them? For example, when you are bringing 5 people onto one table, what are you promising them? Now, when the BBI will have sailed through, you are promising them that one can be prime minister, the other can be deputy prime minister, and the other can be deputy president. So there is something to share. But when you bring them too early and then we don't have the BBI, what then will you be able to share with them? So I think he's being brilliant enough to ensure that his coalition that is trying to craft comes after. And I'm expecting people like Mukhisa Kitui to be part of that coalition. I'm expecting people like Kivutha Kibwana to be part of that coalition. Of late, when you listen to Maendeleo Chap, he also leans more towards that side. So, of course, there will be a Raila Odinga coalition. It will definitely be there. But then it will not come at this time. And now that is where the problem of the One Kenya Alliance will come in. Because by the time these alliances will, there might even be a William Ruto coalition that will come up. So when those 2 coalitions come up later, then the talk of town will be about the new coalitions and not the One Kenya coalition that will have existed for over a year. People love new things. People love new news. And that's why when you exist for too long, you become stale and you stop being news.
Daktari,
yes,
your take on that. Are we likely to see another shocker?
Looking at the scenario prevailing as it is now, Bwana Victor, you know, this handshake has costed a lot Raila's support in his backyard. Because before the handshake, when we talk about the NASA coalition, Raila was a very powerful man. Talk about Western, talk about Coast, talk about all these places, even Eastern. Raila had a hand. Now, when you look at the coalition that are coming up now, it is like it is costing Raila a lot of support. Because when you talk about Coast, who are now coming up with their own party, you talk about Western, which they are now coming up with this coalition. Which, of course, most of these places that we are talking of now were Raila's strongholds. So, Raila has to work extraordinary to achieve his original base, I mean political base. And going by that again, the possible alignment that may actually be very fruitful for Raila is an alignment between Raila and His Excellency the Deputy President.
Is that even possible?
No, I'm just telling you the possibilities.
But
because
is it possible for them
one
to
thing
come
that
together?
I know,
because they say in politics there are no
one thing that I know,
enemies.
one thing that I know in politics, you cannot, like Right Honorable Raila, he can never accept to lose or be outside. He would rather have a half bread than having nothing at all. So in the end, they may say, yes, we have to accept that Ruto has been the deputy president for the last 2 years, so he can front him as the president, and he becomes the deputy president. That is not an impossibility to Right Honorable Raila Odinga, because by the end of the day, he will be in the government. And then let us look at this again, Bwana Victor. His Excellency the President has a very big influence, which I can say it is a silent influence, which we are yet to understand. The whole of Mount Kenya region are yet to speak. They have not spoken anything, but they are yet to speak, and their leader is His Excellency the President. So in this case, this silent lot means a lot in our future politics. It will also determine who will be the president come 2022.
Yes.
So looking by, I mean, we've been observing that maybe out of this handshake, His Excellency the President may say Raila Tosha, or he may go back to his original friend, the Deputy President, Tosha. So that one also is something that I can say it is a sleeping giant that if it wakes up, it will determine the winner come 2022.
Let me just put it this way. So what do you expect moving forward?
Moving forward?
Yes.
Maybe next time when we shall be here, you will be confirming what I'm telling you today. The only viable
is dynamic.
Listen. I'm telling you the dynamism that is ahead of us.
Yes.
The only viable strategy for Right Honorable Raila Odinga and Deputy President William Ruto is for them to come to a consensus and agree to forge ahead for the 2022. That is the only way Raila can recover his backyard.
What if it doesn't? What if it doesn't? Mundalo.
There is a way in which nowadays, I think for the last 2 months or so,
yes,
people allied to the Deputy President have a lot of praise for Raila Odinga. They have a lot of good
strategy?
words.
Is that a strategy?
They have a lot of good words for Raila Odinga, including the Deputy President himself when he said he's the only national leader in the country, which is true, but not one of the words you expect from the Deputy President anyway.
Yes.
So I have seen a lot of them really trying, because the reality is that the Deputy President has, and his supporters and his strategists have been able to come to the reality that they stand cornered. They stand cornered in this manner. They stand cornered by the realities of the by-elections that have happened before, where out of about 10, they were able to win about 1 or 2. So the association of people and bringing, they're coming to the reality that Kenya is a highly tribal country, highly ethnic country, and this constituency called Hustler is more euphoric than realistic. You have a lot of, they go to Kisii and you'll have a lot of them come and attend your rallies. But when they go back home, they remain Kisiis and they have their leader.
Yes.
They remain Luyas and they have their leader. They remain Kambas and they have their leader. And that is the problem that is here. And that's why the Deputy President is finding himself in a corner. Because with the One Kenya Alliance, which is trying to lock out every other region and making every other region more ethnic and regional based,
yes,
then the Hustler narrative becomes something in thin air, because then it lacks ground support if everybody is to go back to their original cocoon. Yes. And that's why with that realization, they are feeling like it's now time that they start warming up to a coalition with Raila Odinga. And they are feeling like, in fact, the more Raila Odinga looks like he's not being treated very well in the handshake,
yes,
the happier the William Ruto camp becomes,
yes,
because then they feel like now what unites them is their problems.
Right.
That they have the person who owned them before wants to throw both of them. Now that is what they want to be there, now their uniting factor. But we have not seen Raila Odinga speak to it. We have not seen Raila Odinga warm up to it.
Yes. But
we're only seeing these other, the Deputy President camp. And you know the reason why the Deputy President camp is warming up to this?
No, tell me.
The reason is because a union between Raila Odinga and William Ruto can only make William Ruto president. Because William Ruto cannot be deputy president for another 10 years.
Yes.
He is barred by the constitution.
Yes.
So when they come together with Raila, there is only one way forward. The only way forward is Ruto must be ahead. The only other way now for Raila is either for him to endorse Ruto and play kingmaker, or be humble enough to play deputy president. That is the only reason why every William Ruto supporter today is warming up to Raila Odinga.
Politics, Victor, is about perception. And going by what is visible now,
right?
It is so visible that Right Honorable Raila has lost its original political base, as it is in Western, as it is in Coast Province.
Why do they want him?
Number two, so when looking by that, Raila must ally himself with somebody very strong, which will also be backed up by his experience in politics. I believe he will make it, but with somebody of the likes of Ruto, not anybody else. You talk about, let me tell you, Victor, the likes of Mudavadi.
Mundalo is itching here.
The likes of Mudavadi, the likes of Kalonzo Musyoka, all these people have been surviving because of Raila.
Yes.
Basically because of Raila. And most of them have been able to talk loudly and have the strength because of Right Honorable Raila Odinga. So in this case, them being alone, they're like orphans.
Okay, let's just move quickly because of time. Let's have a lineup, the One Kenya Alliance.
Yes.
Give me your probable lineup from the top in that order. Because their biggest headache right now is to pick who is going to be the president. Should they make it to 2022? Paint me a picture on who is going in that particular order. Give me a picture.
If the One Kenya Alliance is, there's a perception that it's being backed by some State House machinery and stuff like that.
Yes.
If that is true, then they will have no option than to front Gideon Moi for president.
Followed by?
Now, I think that would be more or less followed by maybe Musalia Mudavadi for deputy president or something. But then, the biggest headache here today is the person you front for the president. And in as much as the perception on the ground and the perception of the supporters of One Kenya is that Musalia Mudavadi will be fronted for president, I doubt they will be in for a rude shock. Because if the rumors are true about who is behind the One Kenya Alliance, then the realities of who brought, the realities of how Mzee Moi brought Uhuru Kenyatta and fronted him to president will be the reality of how then Uhuru Kenyatta will front Gideon Moi for president.
Daktari, your lineup?
I think my perception is a little bit different, Victor. Looking at Gideon, you talk about coalition, you talk about an alignment, people coming together. Whom do you expect in Rift Valley Gideon to come with? Because as we are talking now, we have only one KANU member of parliament. If we have, but almost I can say none. Who is he actually bringing? And even if the president said, I'm endorsing you, without your own constituency, can you make a wake up and become the president overnight? So in this case, Bwana Victor, look at if it was Mudavadi.
Yes.
Mudavadi has a bigger constituency, the Luhya land. If they front their own person, I could see Mudavadi having a constituency because he has the people. So if today the coalition will say they pick on Mudavadi, I'm sure that they will make some effort.
Give me your bet line. Give your bet line.
My best this coalition. We're talking about the coalition.
The probable lineup.
The probable lineup, I can see Mudavadi being ahead of all this. Then, because of strife, Gideon would come on the other side. Maybe Kalonzo come from the other side. I think that will be the trend. But the key person here is Mudavadi.
Okay, gentlemen. My director says that we are running out of time. Let's just cross our borders briefly and talk about Tanzania. May he rest in peace. Dr. Magufuli was buried a few weeks ago, and here we have got the new president, and she's come up with a raft of measures trying to bring the country back to line. And one of them is to form a task force to look into the coronavirus. What do you see in Tanzania moving forward? Mundalo?
I think I was part of the people who are very skeptical with the leadership of Suluhu, having been a vice president that was even very little heard about. But I think she has taken it up from the right trajectory. We've seen her trying to really bring in the energy that Magufuli left. So I think she's going toward the right direction, and she's also trying to align the country back to the realities of the entire world, so that the country does not remain isolated from the rest of the global space. So I see a lot of progress that is going to happen in Tanzania. I see her continuing the legacy of Magufuli. The biggest problem with our judgment of Magufuli sometimes is that we concentrate so much on the COVID, on his stand on COVID, and then forget about many of the other good things he did, because he was able to revamp the infrastructure and did a lot of good things, build the airport without loans, by the way, that we are doing in this country. So I think President Suluhu is, I think she's a good bet for Tanzania. She'll be able to move the country to better.
Daktari, as we come to an end,
When I looked at Suluhu, this is a very balanced politician. She's also very sober in her look. And even the decision that she made, that she is now looking forward to technocrats or professionals to come up with so that the country can take a position based on the advice from you have heard the president when he was saying he arrived at the lockdown after receiving pieces of advice from the professionals, the doctors, on how to curb the COVID-19. Look at the way Madam Suluhu, the president of Tanzania, is approaching the whole issue. In fact, she seemed to have arrived at the point that Tanzania has been isolated. As far as the COVID issue is concerned, and the kind of denial that they have experienced for a long time, she's feeling that they isolated themselves from the world.
Yes.
And because of that, she's coming now with a polite approach.
Right.
An inclusive approach.
Yes.
That let us think. Otherwise, if you can ask Suluhu Sahi, what is your position? She can tell you that people must be tested. We must follow the Ministry of Health regulations on how to curb this pandemic.
Yes.
And that's actually the position that she has.
So it means that Tanzania has a new future. Gentlemen, my director says that we are short of time. Of course, we cannot exhaust this. We have so much to talk about, but time runs and flies when we have a good time, all right? We have got Mundalo Advice, who's a communication strategist, and Daktari Joseph Rotich, who is a governance analyst. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And of course, you as a viewer, thank you so much for keeping us here. Remember, communication continues online. Go there on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Let's get talking. We are taking a short break, but we'll be right back with Lifestyle. Keep it KBC. Good morning, Kenya.